The CentreSteer Podcast, a Land Rover podcast by Land Rover owners. In our second episode, we discussed Bob Marley, alternative fuels, winter preparation, and the Land Rover community and clubs. This is our second episode of the podcast, and we're still getting our footing, but we're interested in your topics, ideas, and comments about the podcast. The best way to get in touch with us is through Twitter at CentreSteer or email us at messages@CentreSteer.com.
And when the snow flies, we can tell people to go back and look at episode 2, because there's an article on winter.
Absolutely.
If we remember any of that by then.
Sure. Cheers, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Cheers.
Back
Where's my camera?
There
There you go.
Welcome to the second edition of the CentreSteer Podcast. I'm your host, John Costage. We're based here near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and to my right is Harold.
I'm Harold. I work on Rovers for a living, but I also drive them. I have a Series 3 X-Mod ambulance.
And our new panelist for this month is Scooter, otherwise known as Scott. Introduce yourself, sir.
My name is Scott, but I go by Scooter. I'm one of the founding members of our local club here in town, Fort Pitt Land Rover Group. I, too, have some Rovers hanging around the yard. Only one of them runs at the moment, and only for one more month. Then the sticker expires.
And, and only today, you actually drove up in a disco and really threw me off.
Yes, I did. Drove it today. Yes.
And to our far right and via Skype is Morgan.
Yep, I'm Morgan. I'm from Vermont, and I drive a 82 Series 3 88.
All right, our first topic for this month will be from Morgan.
One of the things I've seen going around the news is actually something I had found a little over a year ago now. Bob Marley's 1973 Series 3 109 pickup is in the process of being restored. It had been in his museum, which is in his house in Kingston, Jamaica. It had just been pretty dilapidated. They pretty much pulled it out of his yard and sitting there. They decided to restore it. So in early January of last year, ATL in Jamaica, I think they're related to Sandals Resort. They're a vehicle restoration and sales company. They pulled it off, and they are now disassembling and starting to restore it. I believe that Rovers North just sent down a new rebuilt engine for it. So looks like it's going to be an interesting project.
Yeah, I saw it, too, in the new issue of Classic Land Rover, first issue out. There's an article in there about the Bob Marley truck, and I think Rovers North is definitely in cahoots with Sandals to get this thing restored. They showed a huge crate of good bit of parts that I saw going down.
So it's a Series 3 109. What else?
Yeah.
I missed that at the beginning.
Just two-door pickup, cab, nothing too fancy.
Did he actually drive it?
Yeah, it was the family truck, and I think they interviewed his daughter for the article a little bit.
They did. I can't remember her name either, but she apparently is a fashion designer and had designed the Olympic jerseys for the year that Usain Bolt won.
Yeah.
And I think she's actually designing new trim for the interior for seats and stuff.
Cool. The truck, they had a couple pictures of it I saw in there, and it looks quite dilapidated.
Yes.
It's going to need some work.
But
Yep.
more unassuming than I would have figured. There's nothing psychedelic about it. There's nothing, when you think of Jamaica, you think all the wild colors, and it's just plain gray truck.
Yeah, for sure.
What color is it?
Hard to say. It was dirty. It looked kind of blue-ish, I think. It definitely
sort
wasn't
of grayish, bluish gray, something like that.
Probably faded something or other.
Yep, something very sun-bleached for sure.
Yeah.
And he actually drove it? Was his...
Yeah, as far as I saw in the article, yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah.
Go ahead, Morgan.
Oh, it sounded like most of the kids, whenever they went on trips on the islands, he was driving them around, so, yeah.
And what's the intention? What do they plan to do with it? Just decide to restore it, keep it on the family farm, or?
It's going to be put back in the museum when they're done.
Mm-hmm. So the Bob Marley Museum?
Yep.
There's a Bob Marley Museum?
Yeah,
it's in his house.
That might be a cool thing to do someday. Go down to Jamaica and see his Series 3.
Amongst other things.
What other things would there be?
Oh, walk on the beach, have a lot of rum, other adult things.
Learning how to bobsled.
That's right. Yes, yes, exactly.
Because, up at Morgan's place, there wouldn't be anybody up there that would know how to do that. So
No, not at all.
Oh, no. Not in Vermont. Not at all. So I think that's pretty cool that they're restoring it and keeping it on the road. That's
interesting. Good publicity for Rovers North.
Absolutely.
For
Yes,
sure.
it is.
I don't know what Sandals. Is that a resort, did it say, Morgan? Sandals? Right?
Yeah, I think Sandals is one of those resort companies. You can go to Sandals Resort in Jamaica or Hawaii. Or
Does Sandals run the museum?
No, I think that the museum is separate. I think Sandals somehow owns ATL Automotive, the company that's doing the restoration.
Really?
Yeah, either that or they're funding the restoration.
Well, that could be, too, like a sponsorship or something.
Right.
Neat. All right.
Cool.
So I guess final words. Harold, anything?
Well, it's just cool that Marley was a Rover owner.
Scooter, any final words?
Correct. And I now want to hear some Bob Marley music.
Actually, I thought of that.
Cue the
music.
Johnny.
No.
Johnny?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's true. You could. Yeah. We'll skip that. Yeah. It's okay. That's all right.
All right.
Well, our theme has that little bit. Does have that feel to it. It is a kind of a beach music thing. So there's a little bit of that already there. So yeah.
You want a hit of this? Okay.
Morgan, final comment.
I'm just glad to see another Rover being restored.
Final word, it's fantastic. Always good to keep them on the road. So our second topic today is going to be alternative fuels. And Harold.
Well, yeah, alternate fuels is been getting a lot of attention lately. Of course, it always does whenever the price of fuel goes up, but certainly nothing new. But it has newer implications, not only in terms of decreasing the cost of operating your vehicle, but also environmentally. It can be cleaner, and if it can reduce our dependence on foreign oils, it's a good thing. Actually, alternate fuels really do go back a good ways, because at one point, historically, gasoline was an alternate fuel. It was an industrial byproduct. They had nothing to do with it, because they were drilling the oil out of the ground to make kerosene for lamps and lubricating oil, and until somebody invented an engine that could use it, they were just throwing it away. There was nothing to do with it. So in that sense, everything's been an alternate fuel at some point, but in terms of our mainstream fuel now is gasoline, and diesel once was considered an alternate fuel also, and it's sort of now a mainstream fuel, but it's petroleum based, so there's a number of different things you can do alternatively. Actually, the diesel fuel itself was never really, well, what am I trying to say? It was not known as diesel fuel until Professor Diesel invented his engine, which was an alternate fuel engine. So diesel is very much about alternate fuels.
What was the main fuel when diesel became an alternate fuel? Do you know?
Well, engines were still in their infancy.
Okay.
And
Was that were they doing steam at that point?
Well, of course, yeah. Everything was about coal and wood. It was steam. So yeah, the new kid on the block was gasoline and diesel, and I can't remember which exactly came first. So I have to look that up. But actually, originally, the diesel engine was invented to use peanut oil.
Oh.
But then
That
they figured out, hey,
delicious.
kerosene will work too.
I think I don't think we should miss Morgan's comment that he said that would have smelled good.
Oh yeah, it would.
Yeah, that would have been delicious.
And you can run a diesel off of used French fry oil, and the smell is magnificent. A lot of attention is given to two primarily different directions in terms of alternate fuels with diesels. One of which is vegetable oil, and the other is what they call biodiesel. And they're both basically vegetable oil based. You can pretty much run a diesel engine on any kind of oil. Works best with a real light oil like kerosene or jet fuel, but you can put fryer oil in it, and it works pretty well at warm temperatures. But when it gets cold out, that starts to thicken, and it gets to what's called a cloud point, and the waxes separate out of it, and it refuses to flow through the engine, and then it doesn't run so well.
I wouldn't think so.
So the technique is to heat that oil and to keep it warm, and you can get heated filters with electric elements and or circulating the engine coolant through it to keep that oil warm so it's thin.
We're still talking diesel.
Hey, we're talking vegetable oil in a diesel engine.
Okay.
The other option is what they call biodiesel, which is just the same oil but with all of those thick, waxy things removed. It's a chemical process called transesterification. You put in some chemicals, you cook it for a bit, and it separates out all that stuff. It sinks to the bottom, and you scrape it off, and you can actually make like glycerin soap out of it. It's a pretty neat product. But what you're left with is very, very close to pump diesel. But it's a bio product.
So how hard is that to do and turn into fuel? Is it relatively easy?
It's not too difficult. You can do it. You can do it at home, actually. Although there's a few safety things you need to be careful with. But in fact, one of the members of our club is doing that in his shop.
Correct. John doesn't know who.
No, I don't. No, who's
Bruce.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
He makes his own diesel fuel.
He makes his own biodiesel, and he uses it for some of his equipment on the golf course.
Yeah, he's got I think it's 4-wheel drive diesel tractor that he runs it in to maintain the course a little bit.
So where does he get his vegetable oil, or
I don't know.
no idea?
That I don't know.
Okay, but he gets vegetable oil, and
I believe he's getting used fry oil from somewhere.
Yeah,
I know there's another club member who uses his oil in his truck, and it seems to work.
Now you can do that. You shouldn't run it straight, but I've seen some research studies, and you can run. I've seen it as much as 20% diluting mixing in with regular diesel with no ill effects. But I think 5 to 10% is probably safer. But you can do that.
One more time. Do what? Mix.
Your used engine oil, your lube oil.
Yeah.
You can mix that into your fuel. And say 5 to 10%. It just extends your driving range.
Interesting. Huh.
And it uses up your waste product.
So what other things can be used as alternative diesel fuels?
Well, you can go down to Sam's and buy a 5-gallon jug of corn oil if you want. It'll work fine.
Yeah.
Again, you have that viscosity issue, but in summer. That's popular in Europe, actually, because all of the taxes they put on the fuel, there are times when the diesel is more expensive than vegetable oil, so guys will go out and buy the jugs of vegetable oil and fill up.
Interesting.
I actually did the numbers, and diesel would have to hit $6 a gallon here for that to make sense.
Oh. Now we know.
But that does happen regularly in Europe.
Gas and diesel hitting $6 a gallon? It's probably past that already.
It can hit 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Geez, when I was in the UK back in 91, I think gas equivalent was like $8 a gallon or something at the time. It was like 50 pence. Mm-hmm. Gas was 50 pence a liter, and if I think I did the math and all that at the time, it ended up being something like $6, $7, $8 a gallon.
Yeah, and it's not gotten better.
Oh no.
Well, there's a company in Massachusetts that I looked into a few years ago who does, I think they're called Grease Car. They do the waste vegetable oil conversions, and they do, like Harold was saying, they pump the coolant from the engine into a tube system within a separate tank to keep the vegetable oil warm. So in the winter, you can actually run them in the winter. You just have to drive, 5 miles or 10 miles on your regular diesel. You switch it over to your vegetable oil, and then before you get home, like 5 miles before you get home, you switch it back again so that you get all of that filtered out of your system.
Or you get an
cool
electrically
idea.
heated fuel tank as well.
Right, exactly. This just has the advantage that you're not spending any extra energy, really.
Right.
A little off topic, but it's something I was thinking about recently. Why haven't they gone down the path with diesel electric hybrids? Is there a reason why that hasn't happened? It seems like a more natural than gasoline hybrid. Makes
sense to me. I like the idea, but diesel engines, I think a lot of it is cost, because diesel engines cost so much more than gasoline engines already. And the hybrid technology costs a lot, so I think that just in order to make the price more palatable, they've gone with gasoline.
I think some of the truck companies have tried it, but again, it's so much more expensive there's also things that I don't think they can really do with the diesel engines that they can with the gasoline engines. For example, shutting down some of the cylinders so that they can run more efficiently when they don't need to be running full bore. But
it's harder to do with the diesel, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, I would think it would be possible. But
Grease Car also has a Facebook page.
yeah, they've been around for a while. I
If you want to look
haven't looked into
a
them.
little bit more information.
What's Grease Car again?
Grease Car Fuel Systems is the name of the Facebook page.
Okay.
They're a vegetable oil conversion company.
Grease Car Vegetable Fuel Systems.
Right.
Biotechnology.
So what's the best? So back to the main topic. What's the best what's the best vegetable oil to use? Is there one?
I have heard that companies like Dunkin' Donuts that are not putting any meat product in are the best, because then there's nothing that starts to ferment in the oil as it sits when it's waste.
In terms of running waste oil, yeah, I believe
Right.
that's probably true. In terms of the actual feedstock, I think canola might actually be the best chemically.
Are you going to get the same miles per gallon? Do you get the same power? Do you get the same?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, as long as you keep the oil flowing, your engine knows no different.
And remember that diesels, any fuel that is unburned goes back into the fuel system.
It recirculates, yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. And they're all injected.
That
Great for
is the
off-roading.
right.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about your float sinking in your carburetor.
Yeah.
They'll run upside down if you can keep the oil in the crankcase.
The one thing that I have heard is that you have to clean your injectors far more frequently because they have those waxy buildups, the waxy particles in them. They will build up in the injectors.
Yeah, and you have to stay up on your filter changes too. It becomes an issue, and not all systems are created equal either. Some are more tolerant than others. I certainly would never try to do this in a modern computer-controlled, like the Volkswagen system in my wife's Jetta. I would never dream of trying to put vegetable oil in that because I think that's just a big risk, and the parts are so expensive when they get clogged up.
So this is something to do with an older diesel engine that is not computer controlled, or just
well,
less.
That's part of it. The old mechanical systems, there's a lot fewer parts, and it's basically a big pump with a spring-loaded nozzle on each cylinder. There's a lot less to have go wrong.
Perfect for a 200 or 300 TDI, maybe.
For instance, yeah. Actually, the Bosch rotary pump they use in those engines is very tolerant of a lot of different fuels. Some of the older diesel pumps in the early Land Rover diesels, not so much. You have to be careful. Part of the problem is the quality of the fuel called lubricity. The fuel has to lubricate all the parts it's traveling through, and not all oils are created equal.
So the positives here are you have you're kind of reusing current fuels, even though we don't see them as traditional fuels because it's some sort of bio.
Yeah, you're reusing
waste.
somebody's waste product that they're going to be throwing away, and you're getting miles out of it. So you're not pumping that much crude oil out of the ground to drive your vehicle. You're using something that already exists, which is cool.
We're saying that it doesn't affect the mileage or your torque or cause any additional damage to the engine. It's not more abrasive or anything.
If done correctly, yeah, there's no difference.
Interesting. I didn't think it was that easy.
The one thing I've heard for back from waste vegetable oil to biodiesel is it's much more corrosive. So some systems, like if you have rubber fuel lines or lots of rubber gaskets, you have to be careful of that.
Well, especially with biodiesel, you definitely have to be careful.
Right.
And part of that is how it's made. If it's commercially made, it's one thing. But if you're making it yourself, you just have to be very careful because you're using methanol, which eats rubber, and you're using a caustic agent like lye, which can tear up the metals in your system. And if you don't get the levels and those amounts of those things exactly perfect, you end up with too much of it left over in your fuel, and it can wreak some havoc. So that is the one risk with the bio. But if you're careful with how the fuel is made, and you've got good components in your system, it's a nicer way to go than the vegetable because you don't have to worry about all the waxy stuff getting caught up in your system. And it works at 0 degrees and all that kind of good stuff. It's the closest thing to petroleum diesel. But you have to make it, or you have to buy it. You can also get, commercially, they make biodiesel blends. You can buy it at the pump. And it's a lot like when you go to the pump and they have the ethanols. They have them rated in like E85, and everything now is at least E10, 10% ethanol. Well, biodiesel is the same way. Its popular blend is B20, which is 20% bio and 80% petroleum. And most systems, even modern late model stuff, can run at least 10% bio. Much like the ethanols in the gasoline, it's the same idea. But when you run up north of B80, then you start getting into some risks, and you have to be aware of what your system is set up for. Another interesting tie-in for the alternate fueled diesel engine is the agricultural implications. I was involved in some projects back when I was in college, doing some research on. A lot of farmers use large engines for various reasons, pumping water or running their machinery, and a lot of times they use an engine to do this. And we were doing some research with diesels that were running cottonseed oil. Canola oil is another popular one, and actually canola is a trade name. It's from Canada, something or other. The plant that it comes from is called the rape seed.
I've heard of rapeseed.
Yeah, not actually a very attractive name. That's why the canola is catching on.
That makes sense.
But a lot of times, the rape plant can be grown a lot of places, and farmers can grow this stuff in a spare few acres, and then they can grind it up and make the oil they need to run their machinery.
That's not switchgrass, is it?
No.
Okay.
Now, switchgrass is popular for making ethanol for the gasoline engines.
Okay.
But the rape plant, I don't know what it looks like, but I just know that you can extract the seeds pretty easily, and you can press the oils out of it pretty easily, pretty cheaply, and then they can use this as a fuel right there on their farm for running their machinery. Cottonseed was popular for the same reason, especially if you're a cotton farmer, because you've got tons of seeds falling out of the cotton. As you extract the cotton is the part you sell, and the seed is the junk that's left over. So you can press this for the oils you need and do it right there on your farm. There's no transportation costs. It's kind of a neat thing.
So what are the emission implications? Is it as clean as I think it's going to be, or is it worse than petroleum-based diesels?
No, actually, it's as good. Diesels actually don't pollute all that much. I mean, they put out that soot, which is just it's a carbon byproduct, but that's not technically really all that harmful. They actually emit fewer carbon dioxides than a gasoline engine of comparable size, which is why they're popular in Europe too, because they're big into their carbon dioxide stuff over there. But as far as running the biofuels or the vegetable oils, no, actually, and they smell nice. Literally, you use the used vegetable oil smells like the restaurant that the oil came from. It's really pretty cool.
That's cool. Yeah, that could be cool.
But from a pollution standpoint, you'd be hard-pressed to actually measure any difference.
Okay.
And it might actually lean towards being cleaner.
So it makes you wonder why we don't do more of it.
Well, there's the cost.
Agreed.
Hey, there's that.
Well, there would be that.
Yes.
But I mean, that's kind of the argument for and against ethanol in the gasoline world, is that when you're growing the corn for the ethanol, it's displacing food crop for fuel crop.
Right.
So you'd have some of that with this as well.
So bringing this back around to our interest, how does this tie into the trucks we have, the diesel engines that Land Rover has? Is that an easy conversion? Is there any conversion at all?
Well, I've dumped all kinds of crap in the tank of mine, and it works just fine. But, I mean, I've yet to run anything full strength, but as far as mixing it into my tank to extend my range, yeah, I've run all kinds of stuff. I mean, I prefer not to put used engine oil in there. I save that for my furnace in my shop. I heat my shop with used oil, but as far as if I've got a little bit of vegetable oil left over from something, I'll dump it in there. I'm not proud. A little bit of kerosene, I'll throw it. You can do that. I mean, technically, you got to be careful because there's road tax issues involved. So, I mean, you might want to consult with your legal advisor before.
Consult with your local gasoline petroleum distributor.
Yeah, but as far as the engine's concerned, it really doesn't know any better. It's fine. Again, that's with a TDI with the Bosch rotary pump. It's like I said, very tolerant of that sort of thing.
So
I would not try that with my wife's Jetta, just because that's an expensive fix if something goes wrong. And those do have known issues with lubricity in their fuel pump.
As our podcast listeners may not know, or know that if they've been listening to the first podcast, my Series 109 Series 3 109 is going to have a diesel engine in it, which is new. And so will I be able to just easily dump some vegetable oil in there? Interesting.
Absolutely, you will. Again, I don't know if you'd want to run full strength, but I mean, in the summer you could.
Could just mix it with regular. Wow, that's.
You find a deal on some veggie oil? Yeah, go ahead.
I'll talk to the local Mexican restaurant down here.
There you go.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Find a deal on jet fuel. Knock yourself out.
Jet fuel. The jet fuel powered Land Rover.
Jet fuel is just refined kerosene. That's all it is. And kerosene is just really clean diesel.
Right. Yeah, they're grades of when they distill it out that's higher up in the...
Yeah, but they're all in the same family.
Okay.
So they're all relatively interchangeable.
Right.
I've used all of them in my furnace at my boiler at the shop.
Is that the way you're going to go, John?
It's interesting. I hadn't thought about it before. I just assumed
smelling exhaust.
That could be interesting, though.
Yeah, you could.
It's like flowers coming out of the back.
If you want to run around town to all the Mexican restaurants, I mean, you eat out a lot. You can just every time now when you order your food. And by the way, could I have a couple gallons of waste oil to go, please?
Yes. The oil
take a jug with you.
Take a jug with me. Yes, exactly. It's like growlers.
Yeah, very much.
Like beer growlers.
You'll be having fuel growlers.
Waste oil growlers.
and filter it through an old sock to get all the bits of breading out of it.
There you go. So McDonald's may in fact be good for you.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah. Good for the environment, at least.
That's right.
Not the hot sauce when you suck it down into your lung.
That's true. You're still hacking that lung up, aren't you?
It was tough.
It was. I'm glad we got started late today.
Yeah.
All right, so final word on biodiesel. Morgan.
I had actually looked into it years ago, and I would love to run either biodiesel or waste vegetable oil, so I'm all for it.
Gooder.
Not opposed to it one bit. However, I do not own a diesel at this time. I might in the future. You never know.
Hey, we can make that happen.
That has to be fixed.
Well, as soon as the disco blows up, maybe I'll be looking at a 200 and
that'd
or
be
380.
Nice. That'd be very nice. Harold.
I think it has great potential to reduce our dependence on foreign oil, which really should be a priority for all of us. So yeah, I'm anxious to see where this goes. But I mean, it has a long way to go to be commercially viable. But it's a very interesting topic that I've been following for a while.
So the final word is this is a really interesting topic, and that's something we'll continue to follow on, and especially as I get my diesel up and running and try that out.
Heralds and Word.
At the turn of the 18th century, Great Britain and most of the known world was at a crossroads. The Renaissance period had brought enlightenment and great advances in science, but very few practical applications to the real world of that day. The economy was still based primarily on farming and handicrafts produced by the so-called cottage industry. But there was a big change coming, the likes of which the world had never seen. This change began with a lump of coal and the homeschooled son of a Scottish shipwright. James Watt was born in Greenock, Scotland in 1736. Because of recurring migraine headaches, he was often unable to attend school. As a result, he spent much of his time studying at home. In addition to the traditional subjects, his father set up a small workbench where he could practice woodworking, metalworking, and model making. Not only did he become very skilled with his hands, young James Watt also showed a great aptitude for mathematics. When he was 18, Watt studied instrument making in London for a year before returning to Scotland. He soon found work at the University of Glasgow, maintaining and repairing their mathematical instruments. During his time at the university, Watt became interested in the steam engine, which had been invented a half a century earlier by Thomas Newcomen, and was used to remove water from flooded coal mines. Although Watt had never seen a steam engine in person, he studied everything he could find on the subject and attempted, unsuccessfully, to build his own model. In 1763, Watt discovered that the University of Glasgow had a Newcomen engine, but it was broken and had been sent to London for repairs. Watt convinced the university to have the engine returned from London and to allow him to fix it. Although it was the state of the art, the Newcomen engine had many drawbacks. It was very large, unreliable, expensive, slow, and inefficient. While repairing the university's engine, Watt was able to identify many of these shortcomings and began to study ways to improve upon the design. The result, which he patented in 1769, was an engine that was much more fuel efficient as well as more powerful and reliable. Watt set up shop in Birmingham, England, and continued development of his new engine. By 1776, it was ready for commercial production. As the orders for Watt's new engine poured in, Watt continued to make improvements to his design. In 1781, James Watt shifted gears, quite literally, when he connected a drive shaft to his reciprocating engine. No longer was his invention just a miner's tool. With a steam-powered rotating shaft, the modern factory was born. The Industrial Revolution was game on. England, and soon the rest of the world, would never be the same again. Although he was best known for his work with the steam engine, James Watt was accomplished in many fields of invention. He invented a new method of measuring distances by telescope, a device for copying letters, an improved oil lamp, and several other useful things. However, in my mind, the greatest contribution that James Watt has made to the modern world is not a machine or a device of any sort. It's just an idea. In Watt's day, marketing people would say that a steam engine could do the work of a horse, or 2 horses, or maybe 10. Watt thought this was an interesting idea, but if it were somehow standardized and defined in a mathematically measurable way, that it could be very useful to compare the power outputs of various designs of engines. He studied several horse-driven water pumping stations and somewhat arbitrarily determined that an average horse in good health was able to lift about 33,000 pounds of water through a height of 1 foot in a minute's time. So Watt defined the standard at 33,000 foot-pounds per minute and called this unit 1 horsepower. Centuries later, steam engines and oil lamps are history, but we still talk about horsepower. Some of us live for it. Some of us are addicted to it. All of us use it. Furthermore, the scientific community, in their efforts to define and standardize a system of measurement based on the metric system, chose to name their unit of power the watt, which forever established and confirmed James Watt as the father of power.
Topic 3 is with Scooter, a winter car.
A winter car, yes. I have a pretty long commute to get to work. It's 56 miles one way.
Yikes.
So I gotta have. I have to be at work. That's a no-brainer. I have to get there, no matter what the weather is. So I need a good winter car. And just recently, I have had a Jeep Cherokee.
We did not believe that.
That has since succumbed to the horridness of having 3 engines in 2 years.
You had 3 engines in 2 years in that thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
One was warranted, or 2. Well, no, 1 warranty. The stock one blew at 80,000 miles and had somebody's rebuilt engine, a well-known company, and 40,000 miles later that blew up. And then it's now approximately 40 more thousand on this warranted engine, and the check engine light has come on, and it has stuck me a couple times and not let me get to work, so yada, yada, yada. It got to summer, so I don't need that vehicle right now. I'm cruising in the summer vehicle, the little Miata, which is good on gas. But I'm going to need something for wintertime coming up, and I know it's a ways off, but I thought I better start looking now. I don't know what I'm going to do with the Jeep exactly, so
you've chosen to replace it, the unreliable Jeep, with a fine British vehicle.
Correct. Correct.
Just in time for the podcast.
Nice
well done, sir.
Move, sir.
I stumbled on to a 96 Disco with 108,000 miles on it. Runs pretty good. Might need a cam sensor. Might not. Has a little... the check engine light has come on. My best friend. And it could be an ABS issue, but we're going to look into that. Despite the light being on, it runs fantastic. So it's got good tires. It's got a new steering box. It's got newer swivel balls. There's a lot of good things about it. And the price was right.
That's always important.
So I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah.
So Again, not as close to winter as needed, but might as well start building it now. So, this being my main winter commuter vehicle, I thought of a lot of different things. Should I keep it stock? Is it going to also be a trail truck because the Series 2A/3/D90, whatever parts I have, that's not on the road yet. Still getting built.
How many years has that been?
Just a couple, 3, 5, 6.
Well, it was together a couple of years ago. Took it back apart again.
Oh, it was together and apart a few times. This might be its 4th rebuild. I don't know.
4th rebuild and 8th paint job or something like that.
Oh, probably more than that.
I think it's the curse of Bill Burke. Bill Burke touched it, blessed it, and he hasn't been on the road since.
Maybe. You never know.
Story for another time.
Yeah, that's a good story. Anyway, so I also thought if I prepare this vehicle for doing some light trail rides, stuff with the club, it's right along the lines of prepping it for wintertime. But should I do things? Should I not do things? And the very first thing that I thought about was, should I lift it? Quite easy to put a 2-inch lift on these vehicles, either a spacer lift or the whole full-blown coils, 2 or 3 inch, and caster corrected this and adjusted that. And
actually, the cheap way to do that is you only have to buy 2 springs.
Okay.
Put the stock rear springs on the front, and you put heavy-duty lifted springs in the rear, and you get a nice balanced 2-inch lift for half the money.
Okay. Well,
now you go hanging a winch bumper off the front, and maybe there's an issue there. I don't know. I haven't tried it but if you're keeping the weights pretty much the same, I've seen that done with good effect.
Okay. Yet another option. I didn't know that. It seems to sit normal. I'm pretty sure that the components on it are stock. Rides fantastic. Doesn't sway too much. Doesn't lean. I looked at it in the rearview mirror today as Mark was driving it back to my house, and I was in the Miata. It looks nice and level. Everything's cool. Rides good. But it has a pretty good set of stock tires on it. So should I, not lift it, run it for a year, and use those tires up, or should I? Surely can't take it on too many trail rides as is. I mean, you can. The stock disco is not too bad off road, but when everybody else has a bit of a lift in mud terrains, and you have a stock truck, and I don't want to hold the group up, blah blah blah. So I thought, lift or not lift. I might wait a year, use up the tires that are on there, and then lift. And it'll give me just a little bit more time to save up and decide what I really want to do with it. But I was looking at the spacer lift, and I think it's $170. So that wasn't too bad. That'll give me some more money to spend on tires, because I surely would. Well, that was another topic. Mud terrains, all terrains.
Technically, the spacer lift is illegal on the front in Pennsylvania.
Oh, really?
Not to say it hasn't been done, but it is on the list of things the inspectors are supposed to look for, and it will fail an inspection if they find spacers on the front axle.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Even under the okay.
It's a detail that often is overlooked, but I'm just telling you, technically, it's a failure point.
Okay, I've heard no blocks under a leaf, but wasn't sure about a coil.
It's front axle.
It is a spacer.
Front axle versus rear axle. I believe it's fairly okay in the rear. Yeah. Again, you could put your stock rear springs up front, and then you could put spacers under another set of rear springs in the rear.
Well, might do that then. I'll have to look into that. But anyways,
or just put spacers under it and don't say anything.
What if I just paint it all black? And I know the guy.
Well, it's between you and your inspector.
Yes.
But I'm just telling you, technically, it is a failure point.
Good to know. All right. Well, we'll cross that bridge when I get to it.
That's not to say I haven't seen lots of them.
Yeah.
Or perhaps even done it myself at some point.
True. Okay. Well, I'll think about that. But I think I'm probably going to lift it in one fashion or another. But
well, the 2-inch is pretty easy to do, and it doesn't really involve any significant parts. You go over 2 and you start looking at really sort of making your steering geometry all wonky, and drive shaft angles start to get extreme.
Yeah.
So I generally don't recommend anything over 2 unless you really want to be in the 60,000 club, as I call it.
Okay.
The guys that drop $60,000 making their discos trail and love to break parts, they can brag about how expensive a part they've broken this week.
That's not me. I don't have that deep of a pocket.
Well, none of us do. But
so 2 inches fine, as long as I can get 235/85 16s on it, which I think 2-inch will get. Maybe a little fender trimming.
235/85 16, depending on the wheel you use, is perhaps even doable without trimming the fender with a 2-inch lift.
Oh, okay. Well,
A 245/75 is a no-brainer.
okay.
You can almost get away without lifting on something like that.
How high is that? 31?
That's,
Oh,
31 and a bit.
Okay.
And it's wider than a 235, so it's a slightly different footprint, which
Yeah.
can be good in snow and mud, and maybe not so much on ice. But
Yeah, true. I don't know. I just have that in my mind because that's what I had on the series truck.
it's a common size.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's becoming less common. It's getting harder to find 235/85s, which means you don't have as much selection of tread patterns, because a lot of guys are going to the 265/75, which is also a 32-inch tire. It's like a tenth over versus a tenth under. It's slightly bigger than the 235/85, but there's less sidewall flex because it's a lower profile,
Yeah.
but a wider tire, so bigger footprint again. Now the issue with that is you start getting into steering problems and stuffing the wheel well with it being that much wider. So you do have to watch that.
Well, I'm probably going to lift it, but I'll have to figure out how. But another big decision: mud terrains versus all terrains. This is primarily to be a winter commuter car, but I can see me, if I end up lifting it, going on a trail ride or doing an event or something. Mike wants to do the Vermont Overland Trophy thing next year.
Nice.
And it would probably be better to have mud terrains.
Yes.
So, and that's all I've really driven in the snow, other than maybe a stock tire. But I don't think I've ever had a set of all terrains. I think I had a set, never mounted them, and then I sold them to another club member, Bill Fischel.
I've got a set of tires on the meat wagon that are technically they're all terrain, but they're as aggressive or even more aggressive than mud terrains.
I looked at those on your truck, but I looked at those didn't you say you got them at Walmart or something?
I wasn't going to name names, but
Sorry. Okay. Well, I looked at them there. I think I remember seeing them. So.
they're pretty. They're fairly
look good.
aggressive, and I got turned on to them because a friend of mine put them on his pickup truck, and he goes duck hunting, and he goes off into fields fully loaded with stuff, and he has never ever gotten stuck since he put those tires on his truck. And when you get those 18-inch snows, he goes to work and never gets stuck.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to be able to do that.
And he hasn't worn them out either. He used to go through a set of tires a year, and he's gotten 2 or 3 years out of those.
Oh, well, that's good.
So, I mean, not trying to tout one thing over another, but they had a good empirical success in my little personal world.
Yep.
And how are they for road noise?
Not bad. I mean, they're louder than a street tire, obviously, but they're not as bad as a mud terrain.
Yeah, mine used to be a little noisy, but those were 35s on my
Well,
F-250.
there you go. But mud terrain's always going to be louder and more aggressive and perhaps less civilized than an all-terrain. And again, you got to look at what you're going to use it for most of the time, which is on road.
You're going to be on road on a highway, and you want that loud noise. It's going to be.
Mind you, driving in winter in Pennsylvania is kind of off-roading all the time anyway.
Well, there is that.
I think less road noise as the snow will mute that a little.
Well, and you leave to also weigh in how much snow we actually get. I mean, lately, especially around here, it has not been a lot of snow. And it's usually small, short bursts anymore.
Yeah, I know that there was a few days there in the winter, air quotes, that I could have just taken the Miata.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Temperature aside, that's no big deal.
Right.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, is it a trade-off for those few days that I would really need it?
Mm-hmm.
At that rate, you could do with a set of tire chains.
Yeah, well, I got that. That's on my list.
So what other winterization things are you considering?
That's okay. Well, that's the very next thing, tire chains. And I've heard nothing but good things about the Rudd, pretty much, I think that's how you say it, Rudd brand.
Oh, yeah?
Because they have, it's not just a chain that goes across the tread. It's a little bit more of a diamond shape, and they have a connector piece in line with the tire to keep things in place in case you happen to slip a tire. It's a little bit more off-road oriented instead of just the chains that the mail trucks have that you can hear slapping down the road.
Right.
Older-fashioned chains. These are easier to put on.
It's like you roll on them? Do you roll on these chains?
No, you set them on the tire, and they will joint together underneath and from behind.
Oh, wow.
Last I knew of, anyway.
Okay.
I've never purchased a set. I had a set of old chains that we had on our service truck that I had for one of my vehicles, but again, no connector links, nothing too fancy, and those you had to, roll on and wrap around.
So how much are these ones you're talking about, this diamond pattern?
I didn't want.
Okay.
I
Like
didn't get.
They're not that bad. They do last a while.
Do they? Yeah.
As long as you're not driving at 70 miles an hour on dry pavement with them. That will shorten their lifespan.
That will shorten the
quite a bit.
lifespan, yes. Right. Yes, I suspect they will.
I do know that Bill Burke sells them. Of his, at least he used to, at his school. I took on a lift kit years ago. But,
Nice.
so I would definitely go with that brand because I've heard nothing but good things.
I like the little twinkle in your eye whenever you mention that name, Scooter.
I don't know what you mean.
We might have to have a whole edition just on episode just on Bill Burke.
Not the only Camel Trophy member I've met.
That's true. You've met two, right?
Correct.
2 Camel Trophy winners.
Yes, and I got grief about the way I acted over.
Oh,
both of them.
I remember that one. I was there for that one.
Do you remember who it was?
No, I don't remember his name.
He was in the Camel Trophy the last year of the disco.
Okay. No,
His name
still.
was Chris Van Est.
Okay.
No idea what he's doing now, but he was at the, where were we? The Central PA Rock Crawling Championship or something like that.
Yeah, that place is closed now. They don't.
Was Paragon?
Paragon, yes, it was
Yeah.
Paragon. We were Paragon. They had a rock crawl competition there, extreme rock crawling.
Yes.
That was some nasty
was
stuff.
cool.
It was cool, but that's true. I remember
With
you.
a right-hand drive Quigley converted van.
Yes,
I remember that. Anyway,
and you were like a little schoolgirl when you went up to meet him.
it was pretty cool. I got my picture taken.
Scooter needs a tissue now.
Well, these are famous. I'm easily starstruck, and they're famous in my mind. You know, Camel Trophy stuff. That was pretty cool.
Gives us good stories, if anything.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. As long as you guys are entertained, I don't care.
That's right.
I will sacrifice my pride for a good laugh.
For good entertainment.
I don't care.
Thank you, Scooter.
All right, another thing to consider, and this could be for any vehicle really, but keeping a winter version of a bug-out bag in that car. For sure. Plenty of room in a disco, obviously, for such an item. But you should be able to fit something like that in just about any car.
So-
I have a really small one in the Miata.
What's in a bug-out bag?
Bug-out bag should be something where if you have to ditch that vehicle, for whatever reason, you grab that bag and it should sustain you for at least 24 hours.
So we're talking food,
A little bit of everything.
It's a survival kit, basically.
survival kit.
Shelter, something to make a fire,
Right.
something to feed you, but not necessarily a whole lot on that. Water, much more important than food. Shelter, mainly, things along those lines. But
Well,
something that
space
is,
blanket things.
Yep, heat shield blanket, maybe even a small tent, maybe a one-man backpacking tent, depending on how big of a bag you want to tote around. There's lots of information on the internet about a bug-out bag.
Okay.
Yep.
Different
And
levels.
I actually built a coffee can system that the Minnesota Highway Department suggests building.
Okay.
So that's the core of mine.
I remember
It's basically
those.
What
it's
is
basically coffee. It's like a coffee can and some paracord and some candles and some bouillon cubes and some chocolate bars and stuff like that, and a pair of socks and a pair of gloves. So basically, you can, if you get trapped in your car in the winter, you can actually use the candle to boil some water and heat up some bouillon, or you can eat candy bars, and that's sort of
Hopefully the tow truck
my
finds you before you've boiled water with a candle, I'll tell you. That could be a while.
my setup. The candles are not for but I trust Minnesota Highway Patrol for knowing what a bad winter is like, and in Vermont we get close.
I'll bet. I was just at an outing a few weeks ago, and there was a vehicle prepared seminar there that the one gentleman put on, and he had something that he kept in his kit that I'd never seen before. Maybe not too important here in PA, but you never know. He went to one of those like REI garage sale things and found one tent pole, that folds down to 2 feet or whatever, and then will telescope out to be quite long, and had one of those orange flags like you'd have on your bicycle attached to the end of it. So let's say you get ran off the road in the snow, you're in a field, something like that. It is snowing continuously. And it could be, depending on the situation, past the hood, past the roof. So you've got this pole that you will stick on the vehicle somewhere. So, and it did save a lady who got ran off the road, and the tow truck guy was going by, or assault truck or something like that, and he sees this orange flag because it's up 10 feet in the air. And, you know, thank God he stopped. Why is there an orange flag flying in the middle of the snowfield? There she was in the car after a couple days. Rescued her.
Wow.
So it only folds down, very small, good, quick, easy thing to keep in the vehicle.
Neat little tip for extra, if you have an extra pole or you want to buy one.
Almost free, really cheap to throw them parts together.
Yeah, that's
even at a
interesting.
yard sale, heck. You could probably find something.
So what else goes in your bug out bag or survivability bag that specifically car related?
Well, it's more to be for you.
Okay.
Let's say the car is inoperable and
Okay.
you can walk out.
All right.
You should stay with the car, but in case for whatever reason you can't or shouldn't, grab the bag, get out of Dodge. Consider the rule of threes right off the bat for air, water, shelter, food being last, stuff like that.
I bet you have a knife in yours.
I'm sure I got a knife or three on me. Yes, you should, of course, have a knife. Yes. And a full-tang knife at that, not a folding knife.
Preferably handmade by a gentleman in Ohio.
Possibly.
Sharpened to scooter sharp?
That would be even better.
Yes.
In a variety of colors or
For-
shapes.
For our listeners, Scooter actually is a knife maker. So
Correct. I have blind horse knives in Ohio.
That's quite all right.
Full plug for us. Something else to consider for a winter vehicle, but also a trail vehicle, communications. Should you have a CB in the car? Should you even go to that expense, or should you have a set of those FRS radios with spare batteries? Both, I think, would be the best way to go.
Well, who are you communicating with? If you have an FRS, you need someone on the other end. Who are you communicating with?
Some of those little radios have a scan feature.
Okay.
You never know. You might be able to scan and pick up somebody else in another car even,
Okay.
and hopefully get in on their conversation. If you got a CB, of course, Channel 9 is the emergency station. 19 is a little more activity, and you could hopefully get a hold of a plow driver, truck driver, somebody, and tell them you're in need of something. Hopefully you'll get through to somebody, but I think having both would be the best. And on a trail ride, I've seen both. You know, it just depends on the vehicle and the club and whatnot, but can't hurt having either. Obviously, a little bit more expense and complexity hooking a CB up in your car, but it's not, rocket science.
Yeah.
Not too difficult. You can even get handheld CBs. Something like that might work in a pinch. Just plugs in a cigarette lighter. Everything is right there. Look like you have one of those big walkie-talkies from MASH.
Those are kind of cool, actually.
Well, yeah. Paint it green and see if radar's on the other end. Something
be useful
else.
in an ex-military radio truck.
It could be useful in an ex-military radio truck. Yes.
There you go. One other little thing that has come up on my disco, and I'm sure on numerous other discos, that after the initial owner has used it to go to the mall or go to the chiropractor and not really has put it in four-wheel drive, the center diff lock lever is stuck. So she's in 4-high.
Well, it's always in four-wheel drive as a disco. It's all-wheel drive.
Sorry, yeah.
It's in high range.
It's in high range.
With open diff.
Yes. And right when you need it, and if you haven't checked it, now it's stuck and it won't move. So the next little project after I get the check engine light to go away is to pull the center console stuff out, lube all that linkage, and make sure that it works. Because right now it's stuck. But while I'm in there tearing into that, I also will remove the part, because I've seen it done, in a field at a rally. Remove the part that will stick the car in park if the tail light goes out. Since I'll have to be in there and tear it all apart.
One more time?
If the tail light bulb blows,
Yeah.
the car will not come out of park.
Technically, it's not the taillight bulb, but if you lose power to the brake light circuit,
Okay.
if you blow that fuse, if you get a wiring fault, if the switch, the little plastic switch behind the brake pedal breaks, and you have no power in that line, you cannot get it out of park.
Wow.
Yeah. Which happened to Mike?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the trailer one time, yeah.
There's also a trick you can use if you pull the taillight out and grab a hunk of wire. You can back feed power into that circuit from like the rear window defroster or something like that, and just put a little power in there long enough to energize that solenoid and get it out of park. But then when you pull up to your next place and you forget and you stick it back in park, you're once again screwed.
Yes. So I figured while I was in there, I'm going to take that thing out. You don't need it. I don't think anyway.
Well, unless you are 78 years old and you have an Audi, you don't need that device.
I thought not needed. Again,
thanks to 60 Minutes, now all vehicles have that interlock device.
Yes. Well, thanks to bad drivers, that we have that interlock device.
Right, and 60 Minutes running an article where they had to specially rig a vehicle to create the results they alleged. But anyway, not to inflame people's...
No, but yes, it ultimately still comes down to bad design and then bad drivers.
So, well, yeah, mostly it's the loose nut behind the wheel that causes most of the problems.
Yes, as with many things.
Mm-hmm. This is true. So anyways, I want to take that out of there. Whether it's a winter, I'd hate to be stuck in the wintertime and that happen. Now Absolutely. You will be using something out of your bug-out bag.
Right, and then you will be using the bug-out bag.
How to fix the thing.
Well, mind you can fix that little problem with nothing more than a Leatherman. So if you have one of those in your bug-out bag, you're set.
I do, but
it'll be mighty cold and windy while you're doing that. That's the part that's going to suck.
True. So I thought while I'm in there fixing the linkage, I'm going to take that out of there anyway. And I also noticed, since it's, I guess, a European spec cigarette lighter, my adapter to power my iPhone wiggles, and half the time I look down, it's not powering the phone.
Mine's the same thing. My Disco too.
I'm going to take that out of there and just buy one at the parts store and put in there.
I don't take it out. I just run another one alongside. That way you got twice. Because some stuff does work okay in that socket. Yeah. Just leave it, and then
my little adapter don't.
So I got a because on the D2 it's real close in there in between the shifter and that cigarette lighter. Mm-hmm. So there's things I can't even plug in. So I have an extender, and that extender fits in there nicely. Like an extension cord and an extension cigarette lighter, and then I can plug into that one nicely. That actually is probably a cheaper and easier fix for you.
Well, I figured I'd have to tear it apart anyway.
No.
Or it's going to be exposed where I can easily get to it. So.
I always figured more is better, so just add rather than subtract.
Does the D1 have 2 cigarette lighters or only one? Has one.
Yeah, that's all I found.
All right. Yeah, because the D2 has one in the back. I mean, it's bizarre, but...
And if I tear into it and add something else, I want to make sure that I have 2 amps coming out of it or something. I want to be able to power my iPad. Because I have an iPad mini and I want to use that as my GPS tether off the phone. But it seems like they never want to charge, no matter what I have purchased. It says not charging. The little zigzag is up there. Mm-hmm. And it is charging very little. It's not fast enough.
Right.
So it'll actually charge while the display is off, but as soon as you turn the display on, it goes into that not charging mode.
Oh, okay.
Is that an iPad Mini thing?
It's both the iPad and the iPad Mini. They just require so much power to charge.
They basically do a preference whether it's run the display or charge.
If it's not enough juice,
need a bigger charger.
Yeah.
Something.
Right.
You need a bigger boat.
You pretty much need an inverter, I think, to get the full charge, because you have to use one of their power adapters, which will put out the full number of amps that it requires.
I bought, I
now, do those actually run 12 volts, or do they run like 14 or 16, or... Because I've got a computer that runs 19 volts, and so you try to charge it at 12, and it's just not going to charge well at all.
Right. I don't recall the exact rating for those.
I know that all the little chargers I've seen at the store say if it charges an iPad, it's a 2-amp charger.
Okay.
I know that those are written all over those boxes, but I bought a couple of them and still no good. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, you got to look at the amperage and the voltage both, really, to make sure.
I always thought it was a faulty, socket in the car or something. But
if it's making anything at all, then the car end of it is fine.
Yeah.
Or 13.8 if you're running on the alternators charging and everything else.
Yeah, and one of the issues with the USB is that most devices charge at just 500 milliamps. So 2 amps for the iPads is far higher than the spec.
Yeah.
So most adapters are just not going to be able to do it at all.
Mm-hmm. So that's another little thing.
So that's a matter of finding a better adapter, and if you have to hardwire it, then so be it.
I have a small inverter that I had in the Jeep that I could plug right in. I'll have to check that when I get home. Maybe that little socket fits better in that outlet. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I could jam a hunk of plastic in there and make it fit nice.
Well, if you're running an inverter, too, you can always hardwire it, which is much more reliable.
Yeah, true. You could run that right up to the engine bay.
With some more unlabeled red wire straight to the battery.
I think I might have some.
Not that you've ever done that before.
That was one truck and job security. I knew what everything did.
Anything else on your list for winterization?
No, I think that was about it. I had a link here to the spacer lift. That's all. I had found a good one from Todco Suspension because it also said that it had shock relocation brackets, so you could have the spacer. You get 2-inch lift, and you do not have to buy longer shocks.
Yeah, that's actually very easy to do. They do it out of some fancy aluminum that's been milled.
Okay.
You can do the same thing with a piece of square tube.
Okay. There was no picture of it, so I had no
nothing.
idea. Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Gotcha.
I
So
can,
if
I
do
can
the
show you how to
coil
do
thing-
that on the cheap if you want to do
Okay,
it.
I might have to do that. So if I do the different spring thing,
Yeah, which is
and lift it.
a great way to do it.
all right, well, I might have to look into that then.
But if you want to go spacers, I can show you the inexpensive way to do that. It's plenty strong. It's as good as those things for a lot less money.
All right, might have to do that.
All right, final words then on winterization. Harold.
I like what you had to say, Scooter. It's interesting, and I'd like to hear more about the survival gear aspect because we don't really get a chance to talk about that too much in this forum.
Sure, I didn't write up a whole lot about a bug out bag or something, but yeah, I can rattle on for a while for that. I'll get something going for the next podcast.
That could be another good topic. Morgan, anything?
I'm in agreement with what he's talking about. I'm used to a similar commute in similar weather, so yeah.
I think the final word is cell phone. There's your best survivability answer right there.
Cell phone and a AAA card.
Okay, our final topic this month is I'm calling this the Parade of Land Rovers, and the reason I'm calling it this is I was watching an episode of Fifth Gear from the UK, and they participated in the Parade of Ferraris. I think they had 250 Ferraris, and they all had to be going at the same time continuously, and I think and they did a lap, I think. There was a lot of them, and they were mostly red, of course, and there was a couple. But it got me thinking, how many Land Rovers have there been? Is there a parade of Land Rovers? And there actually has been. In the Guinness Book of World Records, they have that at the Jaguar Land Rover Proving Ground in Warwickshire, UK, on the 24th of April, 2011, there were 300 trucks? There were 348 vehicles for the convoy for Heroes, and they even had a couple Pink Panthers, which I thought was really interesting.
Nice.
So that was pretty impressive, I thought. So that also, so there actually has been 348 trucks all in one place. And there's another little interesting thing that came up from some research, actually, thanks to Morgan. This year, in South Africa, there was something called the Landy Festival, and on March, I forget the date. I thought I had it there, but I think it was March 2013. This year, in South Africa, there was 512 Land Rovers all together to make the Land Rover logo, the oval logo, which we're looking at a picture now. Is pretty interesting. So if you're, for the listeners, if you can go to landyfestival.co.za, that's landyfestival.co.za, and you can see all the Land Rovers making the logo. I thought it was pretty nifty. Actually, I think they used a few more. They had a few more than they probably really needed if you look at the logo. But it's kind of interesting. Which leads me to all of the three of us here are part of a club, and I think Land Rovers actually brought us together. That was the reason why I think we're all friends and we all know each other. And that's of course I got to know Morgan was because of Land Rovers. I wouldn't know him otherwise. So it builds community and it builds people to get together, and it's kind of interesting. And I actually have a little surprise for you guys. You don't even know this, but I just got this today. I have, because of community, my third Rovers North sighting. So I have.
Oh boy!
Here's an unboxing.
Your third one each coveted mug.
This is my third. Yes, one each. Oops, sorry, podcast listeners. Third one each. Yes,
Ta-da.
I have the coveted Land Rover mug from Rovers North, and My third one. I don't know what the citing was for because I haven't looked at the issue yet. But I think the issue just came out, so that's my third one.
You fill those things out so often, you don't even remember what they're for.
Oh, I don't.
What is the record now for number of sightings from one person? How many mugs have they given to one person?
I don't know. We'll have to ask Jeff and
You're
find out.
setting a precedent now. They're going to have to come out with a coveted teapot just for you, because you have a whole service now.
I would love the coveted T1 teapot. That'd be fantastic. I'd love that. But this just goes to show you that Rovers have built this community of people that get together and do cool, interesting things. They do the sightings. Rovers North has their sightings feature, and they even have a magazine really devoted to the topic. And
I have met quite a few people because of that car and made some good friends. That's for damn sure.
I remember meeting you.
Courtney and I went to the Freelander
debut.
Yeah, because we drove a South Africa spec orange Freelander.
I drove a black one. It wasn't South
We
Africa
drove the
spec.
one. It was orange, had a bunch of stickers on it.
Yeah,
I know.
they were driving cross country.
Yes,
It's the stickers that make it go everywhere.
Well, the stickers. The logo was cool. Do you remember the logo?
No.
It was about, a tall rectangle.
Oh, yes.
Picture view, red and yellow, had the steering wheel.
Had the steering wheel.
Freelander.
I still have a ball cap with that logo on it. Yes. I went down to, at a time in Pittsburgh, the only place you could buy a Land Rover was Ascot. Ascot Imported Cars.
Yes.
And I bought my Freelander. It was my very first Land Rover. Bought my Freelander December 14th, 2001.
Hell of a way to start.
Ta-da.
I like
It's a
that.
good entry-level Land Rover.
Great intro. I love it. It's fantastic. I still like that car. I miss that car. I really enjoyed that car. It was great. The Freelander 2, not so much
It's
exciting. about
quietly melting into my driveway. You can come visit anytime you
that. I
want.
do visit it. I see it there, and I get all weepy. And yes, I know. But not that I remember the date, but it was 2014. December 14th, 2001, that I took possession of my Freelander. And
Not that you remember the date or anything.
No. But the next month, I think it was. No, before that, it was like October. I had put my order in like in August or something. 9/11 happened actually, and then I think in October they had that event at Ascot, and I went down there. And I'm leaving, and I had test drove one. They had one there to test drive. It was kind of fun, and with some driver guy. I don't even remember who it was. And then
people.
And then I'm leaving, and somehow I start talking to you. You start talking to me.
The three of us were just walking on a sidewalk
Yeah.
going to a same area or something. We were heading toward Courtney's Range Rover.
Yeah, and we start talking, and I found out there was a club, and they invited me. He invited me to the club, and it's
all been downhill from
It
there.
has all been downhill. Yeah, because but
See how often you invite strangers to come out to the club now.
You stupid scooter. You've been quite the club member, hosting our Christmas parties, doing a good bit for the club. A lot of things that nobody would know unless they were in the club.
That's true.
But like I said, I've met tons of great people because of that car.
you've met Bill. You've met Bill Burke. You've
I met Bill Burke.
met Bill Burke. That was
Also met Bill Fischel.
and you met Bill Fischel.
And they're interchangeable. They look similar. They have similar credentials. And they both have Land Rovers.
But who has a functioning Land Rover?
Oh, I'm sure Fischel could come up with
Something eventually.
Well,
Yes.
the key there is volume. You have enough of them, the chances are pretty good that at least one of them will operate on any given day.
It's true.
Yes. I now have 3 in the yard, 1 works. I think that's a good ratio.
That's actually very good.
That's what I have. I have 3 and 1 functions.
Morgan, how many do you have?
I have just the one, and it's sort of functional right now.
Okay, well,
One? What's wrong with you? Potato chips?
I
Come
think
on.
he has a girlfriend.
Oh.
Yeah,
you need a parts car.
exactly.
Well, how did you start the seriesparts.com site? How did that come about?
Well, it's because I only have one Land Rover, and I keep needing parts for it. So,
So it was a service just for you to find parts.
exactly. So yeah, it's just basically all the things that I was already doing for myself. I said, why hasn't anybody else built this, and why don't other people have access to this? So it basically goes to eBay and Craigslist and all of those, and pulls down only series parts.
Now,
So.
when are you going to expand a Defender?
I actually
hit
thought
that
about
Many
it.
parts are interchangeable, you know.
That's
Exactly. I actually had looked at buying the Defender Parts domain name at the same time, and I should have, because somebody else bought it. So,
Rats.
You could still
Yeah.
offer the content even without the name, though, couldn't you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I would just want to pick another good domain name for it. So I will definitely
Just
do
have it
that.
as a separate page on Series Part.
I could, definitely.
I mean, those of us
think
who
it
know
might-
where you are could come look there anyway.
Right. There are lots of Defender parts because I don't weed them out because they can be either are compatible or can be hacked into use on a series. So
Well, a hammer usually is a good tool for adjusting the fit of any series truck part. So.
exactly.
My hybrid was half D90 and half series truck. It all jives together.
And a whole lot of Range Rover underneath.
Eventually, well, yeah, that too.
And a lot of Range Rover.
Exactly. I've thought of starting an RRC parts site too, but
Yeah, that's still a lot of work. So this just shows that there's a lot of community, a lot of good times, a lot of folks have become friends. My other favorite story is meeting Harold. Actually, I always enjoyed this story.
Yeah, running me down while I was shoveling out your driveway. Thanks, pal. Nice to meet you.
I was having it was February, having a bonfire on my property. And invite everybody I knew. Harold's new to the club, never met him before. Invited him, said, "Come on over to the bonfire." And I had left the site, was coming back in my Freelander, and I'm cruising through, and there's two people digging the snow, and I'm like, I'm not stopping, because if I stop, I'm going to get stuck, and I keep going. So I just blew through there. Find out later.
Well, you were in the Freelander after all.
Well, hey, it had good, fantastic tires, and made it. I find out later it was Harold, and he was being nice and shoveled the snow for everybody so other cars could get through.
Well, we showed up early because there was a suggestion that people come early and help to sort of pack down the roads so that those of us in lesser vehicles wouldn't get stuck. And so we showed up in our P38 with the half-balled street tires and went right up. It was only 18 inches deep. So what? We just drove right through. We figured, well, okay, it's fine.
It was only like 6 feet of snow, too.
Yeah, I mean, but we get there kind of early because that was a suggestion, and there's not a soul around. And we're like, okay, I think we're in the right place. This kind of looks like they're setting up for a fire, so okay, fine. And nothing else to do. It's like, well, okay, we got to stay warm because we're going to get cold otherwise. We see a shovel, and so we just start working. Up comes, I guess, your cousin.
Was my cousin,
gets there. She's there early for one reason or another, and in the truck with two-wheel drive pickup truck with her boyfriend, and he gets it promptly stuck right where we're shoveling, right in the way, and because it's a two-wheel drive pickup truck with bald tires and no weight in the back, and so she just figures she'll be polite. She gets out, and so you must know Johnny. You must be one of Johnny's friends. I said, well, yeah, once I meet him, I will be, I guess.
and look at him now.
Well, yeah, I'm still here.
I remember that bonfire.
You were there. I invited you. Yeah.
Kathy and I were there.
That's
Many
right.
remember that bonfire.
That was a great bonfire.
That was an epic fire.
That was an epic fire, and I told people then that may never happen, and it won't happen. That property is being sold, but that's not, and it wasn't going to happen ever again.
I want a mug that says I was at the first and only.
First and only something. What do we call that? Winter. Freezer burn, wasn't? No, freezer burn.
It was freezer burn.
I think it was freezer burn.
What we need is little commemorative edition Zippo lighters.
I should do something. Get something. I was there at Freezer Burn. I had my iPod. This is back when I had an iPod. The iPod froze. It would not run. It was so cold. It was, 20 degrees?
It was 6 degrees on the drive home.
And at the time, so that was about 5-6 years ago. So my 73, maybe 7 years ago, my 73-year-old uncle was there, and my aunt was there, and they loved it. They had a great time. It was pretty interesting. I enjoyed that. That was good times.
Wasn't Tyler's Disco just in the barn or something?
Tyler's Disco, I think, had
freshly
installed in the barn. Yes, that's correct. Yes. So as you can tell, we're all the three of us in particular, are all part of the Fort Pitt Land Rover group. Don't call it a club. That's another conversation, though.
You wouldn't dare want to call it a club.
Don't call it a club. It's a group. It's a grouping. But go to fplrg.com if you want to.
Everyone has
check
a club.
us out. Everyone. So we have a
We are
group.
different and unique, and from Pittsburgh.
I do like our logo, though.
It is FPLRG, which is pronounced F-plurg.
Yes, by some. So, are you part of a club, Morgan?
I am actually not. No.
Oh, why not, sir?
Let's make him a member.
We should. Actually, I think he is a member.
We
far as
have
I'm
a New
concerned.
England subgroup.
Yeah,
We do have a New England subgroup. Yes.
Nice.
Do you know Tim Smith and Nick Danger?
Yeah.
I have actually not met Nick Danger. I know from some mailing lists. Tim Smith, can't remember. I don't think I've met Tim Smith.
He has a lightweight,
88-inch lightweight.
Yes, and he was at
a Sankey trailer, I believe.
He does have a Sankey trailer that he's converted to sleep on. He has that
got a rooftop tent on it.
Yep, exactly.
I believe I've seen his around.
Yep.
He's a good guy.
He is.
Yeah.
There's also another.
Nick's a little shaky. No.
We will not cut that out. There's also another interesting club that I'm a member of too, which is the Ex-Military Land Rover Association, EMLRA. Very helpful club, and that has helped me out actually to help get the Defender imported of all things. Because a guy on that end, Ian, was stepped right up, said you need some help, great, and he took care of things for me to get the truck imported. But nice little group of people.
Mostly in terms of boots on the ground in that case.
Yes, absolutely.
But they're a good source of information, especially if you've got an ex-military Land Rover. They can be useful for civilian as well, but the ex-military stuff is these guys know their military gear, especially as it relates to Land Rovers. So it's a good resource there.
It is, and they do stuff, especially in the summertime. They go out to there's World War II reenactments, and there are other gatherings of military vehicles that they will. I don't know if they're all reenactments.
They bring their Pink Panthers out to Warwickshire for the
parade of rovers. Yes, they also go to.
I guarantee those guys are from the club.
I'm sure they were. Yeah.
Not Land Rover oriented, but something very similar. Since they've started having a Jeep get together in Butler, PA.
Oh yeah,
there was a pretty good sized World
Bantam.
War II reenactment,
which is actually the Bantam get together at that point.
It's Bantam Jeep. Yeah,
there was a lot of. The World War II setup there they had was fantastic.
Yeah.
Also, they did
lots of great vehicles.
So you're saying they had the Bantam Jeeps, but they also had World War II World War II vehicles.
Yeah, Willys.
Okay.
And, I'm sure there are a couple Fords mixed in there.
So what was
mainly Willys?
What was the first Jeep? Was a Willys or was that the Bantam?
Bantam originally got the contract and the design, but they couldn't fulfill. They couldn't build enough.
And that was built here north of Pittsburgh in Butler, PA, right? That's the first ones. They were, from my recollection, they put them onto barges and floated them down the Ohio, floated them down the Mississippi. And that's where they would put them on the bigger ships and ship them overseas, which I thought was really interesting. But then Ford, and they couldn't fulfill the
so in order to get enough production volume, they expanded the contract and gave some to Willys and to Ford.
Yep,
primarily mostly Willys.
Willys. I thought Ford had the bigger contract. No,
I think Willys made more at some point.
Okay,
I could be wrong. I don't know my Jeep history all that well.
So they started that Bantam. If I did I get it right, festival.
Yeah,
this is the second
Heritage
year
Festival, something like that. It's either the. Let's see. I think last year was the first.
I think it was the first year. They made a big push for it in August.
Around Father's Day. No, I thought it was around Father's Day.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong.
Of course, I thought of it going because it'd be interesting, but
it was very interesting. And I had the Jeep at the time, so in on the parade, and but it was really cool seeing all the vehicles. Of course, no way cool Land Rovers, but needless to say, there was very cool trucks there. Diesels. There was a great CJ8. Pretty long wheelbase lift, big diesel engine, snorkel. There was a lot of cool trucks. But the World War II thing was really neat.
It'd be cool.
A lot of old guys who looked like they were plucked right out of a movie set.
Right. Yeah.
In their full regalia, head to toe.
What was that? A couple years ago, they brought to Pittsburgh the. It was an LST. It was a landing ship transport. They pulled it up the Ohio and then they docked it at Pittsburgh and you got to visit it. I can't remember the name of it, but you got to. It was like, it was actually pretty slick. It was.
Oh yeah, with the fake MASH Jeeps on it and all that.
Yes, and they actually had a blue Navy Jeep on there, which was kind of cool. It was in Navy colors, but they had the two decks and then they had the upper deck, and you could actually go in on the main landing deck where they would drive tanks. They could put tanks in there, and I think the next deck up was for Jeeps and such things. That was pretty slick. It still exists and still going around. But that's the neat thing about I think like EMLRA is they kind of keep that stuff going so people know about it, about the history. One of the reasons, of course, I think I like doing the podcast too is because I like talking about the history and the interestingness. And of course,
I don't think there's anything like that though here in the States. Probably not enough vehicles.
There's a whole season of military get-togethers in England. It seems like they're just very into it over there. It seems like every month there's something else going on.
Well, but when that ship, and I wish I could remember the name of that ship, but when it came up the Ohio, a bunch of people came out of the woodwork that had old Jeeps, old military vehicles. They had the clothing, they had the signage down. This was all American, military stuff.
Yeah.
But these guys, World War II vintage, and this stuff came out.
But if you hold the event, people will show.
That's exactly it. That stuff came out.
There's got to be a good bit of that around, because going to the Bantam Festival, you can see that there were a few companies that specialize in selling repop items and different parts for fix your Jeep. Tons of those Jeeps, and like you said, in the encampment there was fantastic.
Morgan, are there festivals up your way of some sort that are military or?
We don't have too much in the way of military. We've got a lot of car shows. Actually, in Stowe, Vermont, which is a big tourist town, ski area, they have the British Invasion every year, which is great.
I've heard of
Lots of British cars and lots of Land Rovers.
Is there a good showing of Rovers? Have you been to the Stowe?
I was going to go the last couple of years, and it conflicted with work. I'm hoping this year. But every year I go look at the photos, and there are lots of Land Rovers. And I know a lot of the guys on the Rovers North Forum go over there.
You have to be our Stowe correspondent.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would love to.
A little podcast uplink.
Yeah, that'd be cool. You could do a little. You could record some stuff while you're there, and then we'll dump it into the podcast. You'd be our roving guy.
There you go. Set aside your time now and put it on your calendar.
Yeah. What's more important?
Exactly.
What is more important? Well, here in Pittsburgh, that is up and coming. At least I think for us, because we started to go as a club, is the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix, which is coming up in July, and there's a number of things that go on for that event. But the nifty thing they have is they have British Car Day, which really is Car Day, because there's also German, Italian, American. It depends on what hill you're on.
Well, it's done as a subset of the International Car Show.
Yes.
And the Grand Prix puts on the International Car Show, but the British Car Day is actually a show within a show.
Right.
It's run by a separate. It's run by the Triumph Club, actually.
Right.
And it's been on longer than the Grand Prix by a factor of 3 years.
Oh, that long? Okay.
Yeah, it's been run longer than the Grand Prix, so it's really the show within a show.
And you're Morgan and Scooter, you're actually talking to two winners.
Oh boy.
And actually won 2 years in a row.
Well, actually, I've won 3 years in a row.
Have you won 3?
3 years ago, I took the meat wagon and just shoveled my junk out of the back and drove it in and took third place. 2 years ago, I shoveled my junk out of the back, drove in, and took second place. Last year, I shoveled my junk out, having done absolutely nothing else to the truck in a year, drove in and took first place. So I've done nothing to the truck since last year. So what am I going to get this year when I show up? Best in show? I don't know.
Best in show, of course. Well, there are.
Wash it for that.
Oh no. You never.
Oh, never. Oh no, that's the best part
you take
about
the paint off.
Yeah.
If you want the next level, you might have to.
That's
no,
the best
actually,
also.
apparently, the precedent I've said is the next level. I've got to beat on it.
Yes.
Throw some dirt into it. I've got to neglect it further.
You've just got to
better.
stop taking all of your junk out of it.
Hey.
And you restart at 3 and go back up to 1, and then you start beating on it.
Well, it helps that if more than 3 trucks show up, which actually has been happening. But then what you don't know is who votes. It's the people that bring trucks get the vote. So, and not everybody likes to vote all the time, because there's 67 categories of vehicles, MGs.
At least.
No, there's a ton of them, and Rover is one, Land Rover's one. So
Yeah, Land Rover is a class, but if you show up in like an MG, there's like 36 classes just for MGs, and like the blue ones are in one class, and the ones with wire wheels are in another class.
Yes, yeah, There's Rolls Royce has like 3 classes, but
for 2 Rollses that show up.
But that's the interesting other little side in comment I always like to make about that event when I go there. I'm like, especially in the Pittsburgh area, you see the cars that come out that, like, where are these guys sitting all year? And all of a sudden these cars, especially high-end flash cars, come out. Hey, you get Aston Martins, you get Ferraris, you get BMWs of Izettas pop out. What's the one really I liked last year was the small Subaru.
The 360.
360. That was so nice. That thing popped. Although I think Subaru brought it, but still, it popped out.
It's an amazing collection of stuff that just shows up, and for what's essentially a local car show, it's really an amazing show.
Stuff that comes out. Well, there's actually a really nice Series 2 that this guy only shows up every year. He drives it once a year. He drives it from his house 40 miles to the event, turns around and goes back.
Oh yeah, Frank.
Yeah, you never see it again. It's
well, but he keeps it at a house he hardly ever goes to, which is the
Well,
other thing too. It's a summer house for him.
Yeah, but still, that's just interesting how this stuff
Oh
comes out.
yeah,
of
it's
the
just
woodwork.
it is interesting.
Yeah, and then this past year, I took the Defender 110 that I had just gotten and imported, and the best part about taking it to this event is we don't care. We drive on. It's on a golf course. So it's nice grounds. You got to go up some hills. They have special ramps so you can get up the curb, and then you register. And we don't care. We're like, okay, we'll just go. But I get up, I park, and then I hear something. I look back, and there's this wonderful looking Aston Martin. It was a DB7, I think it was, spinning its wheels. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. There's a little bit of dew still on the grass, even though it's July. And he's spinning his wheels, and I start walking over. I'm like, I was going to offer him to tow him, but I thought that really cool. But he got away. He got out before.
Yeah, these guys are all having the low clearance. They have to go up the ramp, and they're just barely making it up the most gradual part of the grade up to the golf course. We just hop the curb, drive wherever around, go through past the crowds. And
my driveway's steeper than the stuff that they have to take other places. Final word on clubs and community. Anything you want to say about it?
I'd like to say that I have met a bunch of fantastic people. I continue to meet people. It happens more, obviously, if I'm in my Rover. We're doing more club-oriented things. And I've seen and been involved in clubs where you could tell that the guys sitting in the front are the old-timers. They don't do anything in the club anymore. They must have done it in the past, and everybody knows them. I don't want to be that guy. I want to always have something to drive. And if I'm not going to do it, I'll bow out and give my spot to somebody else. But it's a heck of a lot of fun all over a car. It's fantastic.
Morgan?
Yeah, I mean, I would, while not a member right now, I've been keeping my eye out for the right club for me, but definitely have met a lot of great people from my Land Rover, so.
Well, I think you're an honorary member of the Fort Pitt Land Rover group.
I do have a stack of stickers and DVDs, so.
That's true. You have the coveted DVDs.
I do.
The ones you must be a paid member to possess.
Yes, you must be a paid member to possess.
Yes.
Except when I feel like sending them to certain people because I thought they're nice. Yes.
You're remotely archiving. Yes, that's it.
It is.
Yes.
That's part of my remote archive. I like that.
Wait.
It was research for the podcast.
Has he seen... Morgan, have you seen the That's Enough for Me DVD?
I sent you 4 or 5, didn't I? Did I?
Yellow DVD
Yes.
hybrid looking thing?
I think I sent you That's Enough for Me. I think I did.
I think I must have.
Well,
I watched all of
he
them,
did
so.
see the 1996 DVD, the one that's
Yes, I did.
retrospective.
Oh,
so
okay.
your truck's in that. Yeah.
The yellow truck climbing up the hill and getting 2 or 3 tires off the ground. That's me scaring the hell out of myself in the hybrid.
Nice.
I think a vital part of the Land Rover experience is the community, and so I think everybody who has one needs to be a member of some club or some group. Not just for the social interaction, but it's also a vital source of where to get stuff and how to get stuff done. So I think everybody needs to be part of some club somewhere.
So the final word is that thanks to the truck, thanks to the community and the people that I've known, that's why I started the podcast, because I thought it was an interesting, neat idea, and I like to talk about them. So the chair recognizes Scooter.
I got one more thing one more quick story to say, and it has to do with community. When I got my first Land Rover, the 72, that needed completely rebuilt, when we got to the point where the engine came out and I was going to rebuild the engine that was in there, and then we realized the pistons were fused into the block, and we beat them out with a hammer and a piece of 2x4, trying to get the thing apart. We removed the camshaft, and the thing had been sitting so long that at the bottom of each lobe, from condensation or rain, or not rain, but condensation, the lobes had rusted at the bottom. The chrome was gone. The rest of the lobe, they were great, but the bottoms were horrible. So I put it out to my buddy, hey, I need a camshaft for a 2 1/4 4-banger, petrol. He put it on the Land Rover forum, the old no picture Land Rover forum, and we're at the garage one day and a box shows up. And it's about as long as a camshaft, a little bigger diameter, and a note in there from a gentleman named Steve Dennis, I believe, and said, I heard you needed a camshaft. Here's a spare. Cheers. So a guy I never met, never knew. Later on, I did finally get to meet him and say thank you and have a beer with him. Out of the blue, here comes a camshaft. Engine was rebuilt. Yada yada yada. That was fantastic. All because of community.
I had a similar experience, as I mentioned earlier, with Ian. I don't know the guy. Just I posted on a forum and said I needed some help, and he stepped up within minutes and took care of my problem. So that was, I understand it completely.
And thanks to him, Morgan has no name.
And thanks to him, I call Morgan Ian.
I was wondering why you did that before.
The community has directly resulted in this podcast, and I think I enjoy talking about rovers, certainly, and enjoy the people I've met, and it's kind of interesting, so hoping to extend the reach of discussion. So that's our podcast for this month, and next month we'll talk about some other topics, but that's it for this edition. Thank you very much.
The CentreSteer theme song, Sunset Rider by the Tritons, is available from Mivio's Music Alley. Check it out at music.mivio.com. That's our episode. Thanks for listening. Join us next time for another episode of the CentreSteer Podcast.
I don't know. He looks like Morgan looks like an Ian to me.
Okay, unbeknownst to him, we have a cue card on the screen. Morgan.
Well, he knows.
He knows.
Okay.
He knows.
Okay.
Yeah,
The
I'm
card
not
keeps
surprised
getting moved, so it can be
in the
better seen.
There it is. Okay.
I just have to remember to use it.
slightest. Nice.
Yes.